Hello there, I'm Tuppence. So this project this week turned out, well, it kind of evolved. It happened because I was making this project, and I will leave a link to that in the description box below if you haven't seen it, and I had way too much resin. So I used the excess in an overspill mould. I needed to throw it into something, and I had this square pot mould sitting on my desk because the previous week I had been using it to make this project. Also, you'll find a link for that in the description box. So I just threw the resin in here, and because I didn't have quite enough, I stuffed it full of already cured resin pieces to kind of just raise the level up. I figured I could make it into something afterwards. Yeah, you'll see what happens in a minute. I will show you how I created it and what I'm going to do to make a project. So at this point I've already filled up the main part of the pot, and I'm just filling up the lid with an epoxy resin that has got a sapphire blue mica powder and a black mica powder in it. And I've stuffed that main pot full of scraps of resin because I didn't have quite enough. So there are hearts, pendants, some of them UV resin, some of them epoxy, and it is literally just a filler. I used craft resin for this, and I cured it in the G3, and now I'm ready to demold. So you can see that I got a really lovely colour and a pretty perfect lid. Can't see very many bubbles. The pot, however, yeah, not so great. It was a little difficult to get this out of the mould. And at this point I thought, oh, that's so pretty, I can see the glitter. Then I saw that moon on the back. This is amazing. I love it. That is in a heart. This I don't love. I don't like that it's so close to the surface and it's got a hole. If this was Halloween, I could do something with it, but I'm not going to use that pot. I will use the lid, however, and I'm also going to use some craft UV resin and some Ultrafine glitter, and I'm going to create the lid again, or at least a very thin layer using the mould. So I've put 3 scoops of the pink glitter in. So I'll mix that all the way through. And I want a pretty thin layer, so I haven't got very much, just enough to coat the bottom. So I'm just going to swirl this around and coat the inside of the bottom of the lid. I'm going to let that settle for a couple of seconds. Might as well use all the rest of this up. And again, let that settle and flatten out. And then I'll pop that underneath my dual lamp to cure. Okay, so here it is. Get it out. And you can see just how thin that is. It is now hardened. So I'm going to pop this into a microfiber cloth. I'm going to create some padding on the bottom. Fold that over the top. And then I'm going to use a round-ended hammer to smack it. And hopefully that's going to have broken into several pieces. Alright, so I've got 4 pieces, and some of these are a little bit cracked, but I'm going to whack it again. Let's have a look now. Well, that's much better. So basically I am trying to create mosaic tiles. Just snap them in half. And this works to give me a nice crisp edge. Even this thin, it's too hard to break otherwise. So I'm going to repeat the process and make some silver. I'm trying to keep them both the same thickness, but this one is just come out of the lamp, so it's still a little bit soft. I'm going to let that cool down and harden up, and then I'm going to again use my hammer to crack it. I want a few larger pieces and quite a few small ones. Then I can try and fit these together in the lid. That looks pretty good. Now I'm going to use the lid mould to build the pattern, and I'm going to pop on some music and fast forward this process. looks pretty good. Now that I've got all of those arranged, I need to fix them somehow. And to do that, I'm going to be using the Craft UV Resin again. So I'm going to coat this with a layer of UV Resin over the back. I'm going to use a microbrush stick to make sure that it gets all the way to the edges and it's laying nice and flat. And then I'll cure this underneath a double-sided lamp. Okay, I'm ready to take this out. It's pretty thin because I'm going to stack it on top of that blue lid. But everything is held together and that's looking pretty good. I think I've got one small bubble, but I'm going to top coat this anyway. And because I used that lid mould, it is exactly the right size. So I just need to line it up. It looks like I've got a hole there, a gap, where I didn't go all the way around the inside. It's still a little warm, so it's actually stuck itself. So that gap is perfect for me to pull that apart. But I'll fill that in a minute. I'm going to glue this on by using a 2-part epoxy. So I'm going to put 2 equal blobs onto a gift card, an old gift card. And then I can mix this together thoroughly using a lollipop stick. I'm going to blend it just for 30 seconds or so because this stuff cures in 4 minutes. And once that's thoroughly mixed together, I'm just going to spread it onto my piece. And at this point, yeah, I noticed I did it on the wrong side. So I'm going to scrape that off, or at least as much of it as I can. And I'll spread that on top of the lid. And I'm going to quickly wipe this off with a paper towel and some isopropyl alcohol. And as I say, I am going to top coat that, so any marks that might be left, they'll be covered up by the resin. Right, so I might not have enough now. I'm just going to spread that out a little bit, and if I don't have enough for this to stick, I'll just mix up a little bit more and add that, because it is slightly domed underneath, or slightly concave I should say. So I'm going to hold this for a couple of minutes and see if it sticks. And it did. So I'm going to use some UV resin to top coat this. I just need to put a small amount on the top. I'm not looking to dome it, I just want to bring back some shine and even out the surface. And I'm going to spread that out with the gloved finger. Just go all the way to the edges. And you can see it's looking pretty uneven at the moment, so I'm just going to let that sit for a couple of seconds and it should flatten itself out, and then I'll cure that underneath my lamp. Okay, nice and shiny, but it does look like I've just stuck 2 pieces together. I'm going to use some of this rhinestone ribbon. It's self-adhesive, and I'm going to put that around the side to disguise the join. And you can never have too much bling either. So I'm just wrapping it round to measure how much I'm going to need, and then I can cut this with an ordinary pair of scissors. It has like this jelly-like nano tape, a very sticky gel-like backing. Right, let me see how wide of a strip do I need. It looks like 3 rhinestones. So I'm going to cut a strip 3 rhinestones wide and as long as I need to go around, although you can patch this. Just try that, that looks good. Now I just need to take off my gloves so that I can peel off the backing tape. And I'll be able to wrap this round and it will stick perfectly well. I had this stuff on a hair clip and that has been in and out of my hair, just washed hair, for about 3 to 4 years. It's only now starting to lose a few rhinestones around the edges, so it is very, very robust. I'm going to line this up, wrap this around and push it in place, and that will cover up the join between the 2 pieces. Right, almost there. Okay, so it's a little bit overlapped. I'm going to cut one of the strips off, see if I can get that to match. Nope, still got a little bit of a lump, so I'm going to cut another one off. I'd rather have a small gap than for it to overlap. There we go. Push that in place. Great, lovely. Now I need to deal with the stickiness. The tape is sticky around the outsides, and it's going to gather dust, so I am covering it in ultrafine silver glitter. And I'm going to rub that in using a makeup brush to make sure that it is well burnished. The glitter is going to stick to any part that is sticky and make it not sticky. That means it's not going to gather dirt. And to be honest with you, this adds so much more shine, it is incredible. So I'm just going to brush off all the excess. I'm working over the top of a piece of copy paper so that I can pick everything back up and put it into my pot. And I've hardly used anything. And look at that, super shiny and sparkly. All right, let me do a quick clean up. Now I'm going to make a new pot. I didn't like the one that I made previously, and I have all of these mosaic pieces left over. I want to put them in the pot and see if I can get them incorporated in it. I didn't want to just stick them on the outside of the other one. So I'm going to try and arrange these onto my silicone mat and create a pattern that is roughly the right size and shaped to fit into one of the sides. I could put each individual piece in there and then pour some resin in there, but they're going to be likely to move around. And I do want to have some gaps in between them so that it looks like a mosaic when I pour in my background colour. So I thought if I laid them down on my mat and then used a little bit of clear sticky tape on the back to hold them all in place, I could slip that into the mould as one whole piece and then set it in place using some clear resin. So I'm going to speed this up a little bit. I'm going to pop on some music and you can see just how I did this. Okay, that is the last piece of tape and that is all stuck together. So hopefully now when I try and pick this up, it should all be joined together. And I've kind of made a mat of the mosaics. Now I'm going to try and get this into the side of the mould. Just push that in, make sure everything is nice and flat. And because I've used clear packing tape, if I set this in with clear resin, that looks like it's in place. Hopefully that packing tape is going to disappear. And then when I pour the blue resin behind it, it should just look like they are set on the side. I need some gloves on and I'm going to mix up some more resin and set this, and hopefully that is not going to tip out and it should just keep all of those stabilized. Okay, I've mixed up a little bit of this Apex One Coat. It's a fast cure resin and I've got 10 mils here. So it should be enough to set this mosaic in place. I'm going to pour it into the side and hopefully that will run underneath all of those resin pieces. Just tip the last bit in. Right. I'm going to swirl this around, try and make sure that everything is coated. I want that resin to run underneath those pieces. And I also want to make sure that there are no bubbles underneath that packing tape as well. So this cures in about 2 hours at room temperature. I don't want to put it in my curing machine and cure it any faster because I don't know how that packing tape is going to react to the heat. So I'm going to leave this on its side and let it cure naturally. And then I'll be back when I'm ready to mix up the blue and hopefully I can pick this up without dislodging the resin I've just fixed in there. Okay, it's all cured. I have stood my mould up and it still seems to be attached to the side, so far so good. I'm going to mix up some of my mica with a little bit of resin and create my paste to mix my colours in. So I've got a sapphire blue mica powder. I'm just putting them into a little silicone pot, and then I've got a black. Okay, so now I can add a little bit of resin to each of these pots, and I'm basically creating my own pigment paste. It's just going to allow that mica powder to mix in much easier into a large quantity of resin. I'll put a tiny bit into each pot, and then I can stir this around and get that powder all mixed in and broken down. And obviously I've sped this up a little bit, so I don't have enough resin in there. I'm going to add a little bit more, make sure that there are no powdery lumps in there, and that's pretty good. So now I can pour this into the larger pot, and that will mix in so much easier than me just dumping the powder in there. Just want to scrape everything I've got out of the pot, or as much as I can, and I can clean that with a paper towel and isopropyl alcohol. But a couple of stirs and that's already mixed in, and I'm going to do the same with the black. And then I can just add a little bit at a time until I get the colour that I like. And there you go, that's actually okay. So I'm just going to keep stirring it, make sure that all of the colours are blended, and then that's pretty good. I think that's a match for the lid. Right, I'm cleaning off my stick, and then I'm going to grab my G3 curing tray, because I'm going to put this in the machine to cure quicker. Put that on. I'm trying to be really careful and not flex that mould as I'm moving it. Now I need to fill this up, and because I can't flex the mould, I can't go around poking my stick in there trying to get rid of any bubbles on the bottom. So I'm going to put a tiny bit in, just clean that off, and then really carefully I'm going to pick this up, and I'm gently squeezing the three sides that do not have that mosaic in, trying to avoid going anywhere near that side at the bottom. Right, I'm going to top this up, and it's going to have to just deal with any bubbles. This is craft resin, it is low viscosity, so it has every chance for the bubbles to degas. And I am going to let this stand for a good sort of hour before I put the machine on for it to fast cure. I think that's probably enough. I'm going to move this over onto my other side, and I'll continue to top that up. Otherwise it will all spill over. So I'll see you for demold. It is all cured and it's cooled down, so now I can try and get this out. And I can see through the mould, I can see all of the mosaic, so I'm optimistic that this has worked. I just need to try and get the resin pulled back to try and release the tension and the suction. It's not the softest of moulds, and there is a little bit of a sharp edge along the bottom, which I will need to take off with a deburring tool afterwards. So I'm trying not to cut my fingers, but if I can just get this rolled back, then I should be able to roll it down. There we go. And then I can twist the middle and it should come out. There we go. Oh, okay. So I've got a little bit of a clear half moon at the top here. I put probably too much resin. I only put 10 mils in there, and I've got a little bit of a bubble that was obviously stuck underneath that packing tape. So I will have to deal with that. It looks okay. You can see the mosaic. It's not quite the effect that I wanted. I think if I didn't put quite as much of the clear resin in there, I would have got a better effect. But I need to deal with this first and just fill that hole where the packing tape has caused a bubble. I can put a little bit of UV resin in there, but I'm going to deal with this on the bottom first, and just take off the sharp bit with the deburring tool. So you just need to scrape the blade around. You can also use a file if you don't like these, but once you get used to them, they're pretty good. Alright, that is better. I'm going to put a bit of cork or felt on the bottom of that anyway. But there we go. Well, at least the pot matches the lid, so let me grab that. But yeah, I think the pot fits the lid much better. So I just need to fill that hole. I'm going to grab some gloves and a little bit of UV resin. I used craft UV resin to fill the hole, applying it with a microbrush stick, dropping it in and making sure that there were no bubbles trapped. I used a UV torch to cure it, and because it's see-through, the light was able to penetrate and get all the way through. And then I popped it underneath my lamp to make sure. And that is it finished. So you can really only see this little hole that I filled in if it catches the light. It's not visible from the side, it's nice and flat. But otherwise, I think it is fine. I could top coat it, but I'm not going to bother. I'd have to flood coat the whole thing. But lesson learnt, if I want to do this again, don't put quite so much clear resin in. Otherwise, I think this is pretty cute, and I really love the colours. And I wish I could say it was a way of using up an overspilled pot, but actually I rebuilt it completely. But I love it, and I hope you love it too. If you do, please go ahead, give me a thumbs up, comment, share, subscribe if you haven't. It's free, costs you nothing, really helps my channel, and you'll be able to come back and see what I'm going to make next time. Till then, bye. Take care.